For a long time, mirrors felt like judges. Silent but merciless. I'd look and see a list of flaws. Too tired. Too thin. Too quiet. Then came a stretch of days alone. No noise. No people. No expectations. And in that silence, I stood before the mirror. Not to inspect, but to witness. Something shifted. I saw eyes that had cried but hadn't lost their light, hands that had held others, even while trembling, lips that stayed silent to avoid hurting, but knew how to speak gently. It wasn't about appearance, it was about being alive. And realizing I deserve love, even when I struggled to believe it. There were nights when I felt like I was unraveling, not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly, like threads slipping from a worn-out sweater. I used to fear silence. It felt like emptiness, like being forgotten. But one night, I sat in it long enough to realize. It wasn't empty. It was holding me. No pressure to explain, no need to perform. Just breath, and the soft hum of my own heartbeat. That silence didn't ask me to be better. It didn't demand healing. It simply reminded me. I am still here, and sometimes that's enough. There was a day I walked without an umbrella. Not because I forgot it, but because I didn't want to hide. The sky opened up and I let it. Each drop felt like a truth I hadn't spoken. Each gust of wind, a memory I'd buried. And as the rain soaked through my clothes, I felt something else begin to surface. I wasn't trying to be brave, I was just tired of pretending I was untouched. The rain didn't care who I was. It didn't wait for me to be ready. It simply came. And reminded me that cleansing doesn't always feel gentle. But it's still a kind of love, one that doesn't ask for permission. One that says, let it fall. You'll still stand. The sun rose without asking me to rise with it. The world moved but didn't drag me along. And for once I let myself be slow. There was always a pressure to be productive, to awake early, to chase goals, to prove I was doing enough. But that morning I stayed in bed. Not out of laziness but out of mercy. I watched the light crawl across the ceiling. Listened to the birds argue softly outside. Felt the weight of my own body. Not as a burden but as a presence. I didn't check my phone. Didn't plan the day. I just existed. And in that stillness, I found something rare. A version of myself that didn't need to earn rest. A softness that didn't feel like weakness. That morning taught me. I am allowed to pause. I am allowed to be gentle with myself. And the world will still turn. There was a time I forgot how to laugh. Not because I didn't want to, but because everything felt too heavy. Even joy seemed suspicious, like a trick that wouldn't last. Then one evening something small happened. Joke maybe. Or a clumsy moment. And before I could think, I laughed. Caught me off guard. Not just the sound but the feeling. Like a window opening in a room I didn't know was locked. I didn't apologize for it. Didn't try to quiet it. I let it echo. That laugh didn't fix everything. But it reminded me. There's still light in me. Still warmth. Still pieces that know how to dance, even after the storm. It didn't knock. It didn't wait for permission. It just arrived, like a shadow stretching across the floor. I used to run from certain memories. Not because they were the worst, but because they were the ones I never understood. Moments that left questions instead of answers. Feelings that lingered without names. One night it came back. That memory. The one I always skipped over in my mind. But this time I didn't flinch. I didn't distract myself. I sat with it like sitting across from someone you once loved and no longer fear. Hurt. But not in the way I expected. It hurt like truth, sharp but clean. And when it passed, I felt lighter. Not because it disappeared. But because I finally carried it with both hands instead of dragging it behind me. That memory taught me. Healing isn't forgetting. It's remembering without breaking. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't justified. It simply stood like a door I chose to close. I used to say yes. To things that drained me. To people who didn't see me. To moments that felt more like obligation than choice. I thought saying no meant I was selfish. Or weak. Or unkind. But one day I said it. Just one word. No. No to the call I didn't want to answer. No to the meeting that didn't need me. No to the version of myself that always overgave. And the world didn't collapse. No one screamed. The sky stayed blue. That no was quiet. But it echoed inside me like a song I'd forgotten. It reminded me. I am allowed to protect my energy. I am allowed to choose myself. I am allowed to close doors. Without needing to explain why. I didn't call him. But he came. Like a night visitor who knows where the key is. It wasn't a birthday. Not an anniversary. Not a date I marked on the calendar. But suddenly, the smell of her perfume in the crowd. A song playing in the cafe. Laughter similar to hers. And I'm no longer here. There. Where she touched my hand. Where we were silent but understood. Memory doesn't ask permission. He just comes. And sits next to me. And looks at me with eyes. That I no longer see. I don't chase him away. I let him be. Because in him is a part of me. That I don't want to lose. Had no color. Had no shape. But I knew, it is there. After a storm. The sun doesn't always come right away. Sometimes, just silence. No answer. No hugs. No, everything will be fine. But it is in the silence that something begins to grow. Oh, not like fireworks. But like a root that cuts through the ground. It doesn't ask if I'm ready. It doesn't wait for me to stop crying. Just is. Where I thought it was empty. I can't see it. But I feel it. Something lives in me. Something that hasn't said the last word yet. Forgave. But I didn't open the door again. They told me. Goodbye, and forget. But I learned. Forgiveness is not erasing. It is an acknowledgement of pain. And a choice not to carry it any longer. I forgave not because everything became better. But because I no longer wanted to be a prisoner of someone else's actions. I didn't look for excuses. I didn't demand an explanation. I simply said, it's not mine anymore. And that's freedom. Not for them. For me. Not everything can be cured. But you can learn to live with many things. I searched for an answer for a long time. Why did it happen? Why then? Why with her? And I didn't find it. Pain doesn't always make sense. Losses don't always make sense. But life doesn't ask if I'm ready. I've learned to live. With an emptiness that doesn't scream. With questions that never end. With a shadow that sometimes falls on the morning. This isn't defeat. This isn't surrender. This is maturity. 'Cause I'm still going. I'm still breathing. Still able to love. Even with the fragments inside. It wasn't a breakthrough. Not a victory. Just one step. But in a different direction. I didn't wake up with new strength. I didn't feel inspired. I didn't hear voices saying, you can do it. I just got up, made tea. I opened the window. And allowed myself not to be perfect today. It was a small step. But it wasn't empty. Because it's with such steps that a movement begins. Not loud. Not heroic. But real. I don't know where I'm going. But I'm going. And it's more than yesterday. I don't trust easily. But when I trust, it's like opening a window in a room that I've kept locked for a long time. I've been betrayed. I've been forgotten. I've been convinced that I'm too sensitive. So I learned to be silent. To observe. Wait. But one day, someone didn't ask. Didn't press. Didn't demand. He just was. Quiet. Stable. Like a shore that's not afraid of a storm. And I opened up. Not right away. Not completely. But sincerely. 'Cause trust is not about words. It is about a presence that does not break. Behold, I used to be afraid of silence. I was afraid of evenings without messages. I was afraid of myself when no one was watching. But one day, I was alone. And I did not break. I made myself dinner. I listened to the music I love. I looked up at the sky. And did not look for answers there. Loneliness became not an enemy, but a space where I did not have to be strong. I did not have to be interesting. Just was. And in this silence, found myself. Not perfect, but real. I am not who I was, but I am still me. Loss does not ask permission, comes, breaks, and leaves the silence. I searched for myself for a long time. In old photos, in habits, in words that I once said. But that I will never return. And this is not a tragedy. It is evolution. 'Cause I learned to live. With new boundaries. With new pains. With new powers. That were born precisely where something died. I am not a fragment. I am a new form. Complex. Alive. There were days when I did not recognize myself in the mirror. When the voice sounded foreign. When thoughts were like a fog. I asked, where is the one who I was? Where is the one who dreamed? Where is the one who loved? And then the memory came, not as a flash, but as a whisper. Brought a smile from the past, a phrase that was once told to me, the look that once held me. And I remembered, I am not only pain, I am not only loss, I am a story that is still being written. Memory does not let me disappear, holds me, while I learn to hold myself. We used to talk about everything, about dreams, about fears, about stupid things that made the day easier. And then silence, not sudden, but the kind that slowly fills the space. Like water in cracks, I tried to find words. You avoided my gaze. And we both knew, something had changed. Silence became a wall. Not protection, but separation. And I understood. Sometimes silence is not peace. It is a cry that we are afraid to hear. I was taught that love is patience, what needs to be fought for. What is real doesn't break. But no one said that. Sometimes love becomes a burden. We stopped hearing each other, stopped growing, stopped being ourselves. Because we tried to be together. I didn't leave out of hatred. I left out of respect. To myself, to you, to what was. 'Cause love, that no longer heals, shouldn't hold on. I was praised. When I was comfortable. When I was silent. When I smiled even when it hurt. I learned to play roles. Strong, careful, unmoved. But inside, it was quiet and empty. One day I said, I don't want to pretend anymore. And it wasn't a protest. It was a return. To myself. To the voice I had been silencing. To tears that are not ashamed to show. To laughter that does not need to be restrained. I am not a mask. I am not a role. I am alive. I was scared by the thought of the beginning. Because how much has already been invested? How much has already been passed? How much has already hurt? But staying hurt more. I did not have a clear plan. I did not have guarantees. I did not have the support I wanted. But I had myself. And this became a point of support. I started small. One action. One word. One I can. And with each passing day, zero became not emptiness, but an opportunity. I was taught to fix myself, to hide tears, to smooth out sharp corners. For a long time, thought that love is a reward for correctness, for silence, for obedience. But then I met myself in a moment of weakness and did not turn away. I saw my cracks are not a flaw, my doubts are not a fault, my vulnerability is not a shame. I am not perfect, but I am mine, and that is already enough to start loving. Before I thought that love is about solving, correcting, pulling out of the darkness. I wanted to be a support, but became a burden. Because I forgot. Sometimes a person does not need help. They need silence nearby. Now I just sit nearby. I do not ask. I do not press. I do not look for the right words. I hold your hand. I listen to your breath. I allow myself to be. And that is the strength. Not in saving, but in knowing. I'm here. And I will not leave. I used to think that love is a fusion. That you have to give everything. That we is more important than me. And I gave my boundaries, my dreams, my silences. And then I was left empty. 'Cause I left nothing for myself. Now I know. Love is not a dissolution. It is a dance of two wholes. where everyone has space, where everyone has a voice, can love deeply, can be there, can share. But I don't disappear anymore. After a breakup, everything seems blurry. Every song is about her. Every street is a memory. I tried to fill the void. With new people. With new words. With new plans. But nothing worked. Because I wasn't looking for someone. But for myself. And when I stopped running, I heard. My voice. My desires. My silences. Came back. Not as I was. But as the real me. I forgave others. Even those who didn't ask. Even those who hurt. But not myself. Because I thought I should have known better. That I should have been stronger. That I shouldn't have made mistakes. But I am human. And I learned. And I survived. And I did what I could. Now I say to myself, sorry. Not for weakness. But for not allowing myself to be alive for a long time. Forgive myself. And that's freedom. My life didn't fall apart all at once. Cracked gradually. With words. With loss. With silence. And when it all fell apart, I sat among the rubble. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I should. And then I took one fragment. Then another. And I started to put it together. Not what was. But what could be. My new life. Is not perfect. But honest. With cracks that I don't hide. With a history that I don't erase. I'm not afraid to build anymore. Because I know. I've already survived.